Amy always felt like she didn't belong in her own family. She was the quiet one, the one who worked hard but stayed out of the spotlight. Her parents, however, seemed to have a different approach when it came to her older sister, Jessica. Jessica was the golden child, beautiful, outgoing, and the center of attention. While Amy worked tirelessly to achieve her goals, Jessica seemed to have everything handed to her on a silver platter. Growing up, Amy learned early on that she had to fend for herself. Her parents always said they loved both daughters equally, but their actions told a different story. Jessica's every whim was indulged. Whether it was expensive dresses, dance lessons, or extravagant vacations, Jessica got whatever she wanted. Meanwhile, Amy's needs were often ignored or brushed aside as not urgent. But Amy didn't let this hold her back. She was determined to make something of herself. She studied hard, took part-time jobs, and saved every penny she could. While Jessica was out partying and enjoying life, Amy was busy building her future. One of her proudest achievements was buying her dream car. It wasn't brand new or flashy, but to Amy, it symbolized her hard work and independence. Amy had dreamed of owning this car for years. She spent countless hours researching the model, comparing prices, and finally negotiating the deal herself. When she finally drove it home, it felt like all her struggles were worth it. For the first time, she felt like she had something that was truly hers, something she had earned with her own blood, sweat, and tears. Her parents congratulated her, but their enthusiasm felt hollow. Jessica, on the other hand, barely acknowledged it. "It's just a car," she said with a shrug, as if Amy's achievement meant nothing. Amy brushed it off, not wanting to let Jessica's indifference ruin her happiness. One day, Amy decided to treat herself to a short vacation. She'd been working so hard and felt she deserved a break. She booked a trip to the mountains, packed her bags, and left her car safely parked in the garage. The trip was everything she needed: peaceful, refreshing, and a chance to recharge. For a few days, she felt free from the burdens of her family dynamics. But when Amy returned home, something felt off. The house was unusually quiet, and her parents seemed to avoid making eye contact with her. Jessica wasn't around, which was odd because she was usually lounging on the couch or chatting loudly on her phone. Amy dismissed it as a coincidence and went to the garage to check on her car. It wasn't there. At first, she thought she must have parked it somewhere else and simply forgotten. But as she searched every possible spot, her heart started to race. The car was gone. Panicked, she ran inside and demanded an explanation from her parents. Her mother hesitated before speaking. "Amy, we needed to talk to you about that," she began, her voice laced with guilt. "What do you mean?" Amy asked, her voice trembling. "Where is my car?" Her father chimed in, trying to sound calm. "We had to sell it, Amy. It was for Jessica's treatment." Amy felt like the ground had been pulled out from under her. Treatment? What treatment? Jessica's fine. Her mother sighed. "She's been feeling stressed lately. We thought a wellness retreat would help her heal and get back on track. The program was very expensive and we didn't have the funds, so we made the decision to sell your car." For a moment, Amy was too stunned to speak. Her mind raced, with disbelief and anger. "You sold my car," she said slowly, "to pay for Jessica's vacation?" "It's not a vacation," her father insisted. "It's a healing program. Jessica needed it." "And I didn't need my car?" Amy shot back. "Do you have any idea how hard I worked for that? How much that car meant to me?" Her parents exchanged uneasy glances but didn't respond. Their silence spoke volumes. To them, Jessica's needs always came first, no matter the cost. Amy stormed out of the house, her mind racing with anger and betrayal. She couldn't believe what had just happened. Her car wasn't just a vehicle. It was a symbol of her independence, her hard work, and her achievements. And they had taken it away from her without even asking. That night, as Amy lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she felt something shift inside her. For years, she had put up with being the forgotten child, the one who always sacrificed while Jessica was pampered. But this was the last straw. She wasn't going to let them walk all over her anymore. Amy didn't know what her next step would be, but one thing was certain. She was done being used. Her family had pushed her too far, and now they were going to see a side of her they had never seen before. Amy woke up the next morning feeling drained but determined. She couldn't shake the anger and betrayal she felt after what her parents had done. It wasn't just about the car. It was about years of being overlooked and undervalued. She knew she couldn't let this go, but she also knew she had to be smart about her next move. Her first step was to gather more information. She sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and waited for her parents to join her. When they finally came in, they looked uncomfortable, as if they knew she wasn't going to let this go easily. "I want to know everything," Amy said firmly. "How much did you sell my car for? And where exactly is Jessica right now?" Her mother hesitated, glancing at her father for support. "We sold it for $10,000, she admitted. "Jessica's at a wellness retreat in the countryside. It's supposed to help her relax and recover." Amy's jaw tightened. "You sold my car for $10,000? Do you even realize how much that car was worth? And you spent all of it on Jessica's so-called retreat?" "Amy, it's not just about the money," her father said, trying to sound reasonable. "Jessica needed help. She's been struggling lately, and we had to do something." "Struggling?" Amy repeated, her voice rising. "She's been struggling because she refuses to take responsibility for her life. Meanwhile, I've been working nonstop, and you thought it was okay to take away the one thing I've worked so hard for?" Her parents didn't respond. Instead, they looked away, as if avoiding her gaze would make the problem disappear. Amy realized then that reasoning with them was pointless. They had made up their minds long ago that Jessica's needs were more important than hers. Over the next few days, Amy tried to go about her daily routine, but the anger inside her kept growing. She couldn't stop thinking about all the times her parents had let her down. Like the time she needed help paying for her college textbooks, but they claimed they couldn't afford it, only to buy Jessica a new wardrobe the following week. Or the time she wanted to celebrate her promotion at work, but her parents were too busy planning a surprise party for Jessica's new boyfriend. It wasn't just the car, it was a pattern, a lifetime of being treated as second best. Amy decided it was time to take action. She couldn't change the past, but she could take control of her future. She started by reaching out to a few friends who had always supported her. One of them, Rachel, had been her best friend since college and knew all about the struggles Amy faced with her family. "You need to stand up for yourself," Rachel told her over coffee. "Your parents and Jessica will keep walking all over you if you let them. It's time to set some boundaries." Amy nodded, feeling a spark of determination. Rachel was right. She had spent too long putting her family's needs ahead of her own. It was time to prioritize herself for once. The first thing Amy did was visit the car dealership, where she had bought her dream car. She explained her situation to the manager and asked if there was any chance of getting a similar model at a reasonable price. The manager was sympathetic and promised to keep an eye out for any good deals. Next, Amy started researching the wellness retreat where Jessica was staying. She found the website and couldn't believe what she saw. The retreat wasn't a medical facility or a serious therapy program. It was a luxurious resort with spa treatments, yoga classes, and gourmet meals. The website described it as a haven for relaxation and self-discovery, which only fueled Amy's anger. Jessica wasn't receiving treatment. She was on vacation, paid for with Amy's hard-earned money. Amy printed out the information and brought it to her parents. "This is where Jessica is?" she asked, throwing the papers on the table. "This isn't a wellness retreat. It's a luxury resort. You sold my car so she could have a fancy vacation." Her mother looked flustered. "Amy, it's not as bad as it looks." Jessica needed time to unwind and focus on herself. "Unwind from what?" Amy demanded. "From her exhausting schedule of doing nothing? Do you even hear yourselves? You're enabling her behavior, and you're doing it at my expense." Her father tried to calm her down. "Amy, we'll make it up to you. We'll help you buy another car." "With what money?" Amy shot back. "You spent everything on Jessica, remember?" Her parents had no response. Their silence only confirmed what Amy already knew. They had no intention of making things right. They expected her to just accept it and move on, as she always had. But this time was different. This time, Amy wasn't going to let them off the hook. That night, as she lay in bed, Amy started making a plan. She didn't have all the details figured out yet, but she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't going to let her family's selfishness dictate her life anymore. They had crossed a line, and now it was time for her to take a stand. Amy didn't want revenge for the sake of revenge. She wanted justice. She wanted her family to understand the pain they had caused her and to finally take responsibility for their actions. And she was willing to do whatever it took to make that happen. Amy knew she had to take control of her life. The betrayal she felt from her parents' decision to sell her car without her consent burned deep, but it also fueled her determination. For too long, she had been quiet, putting up with their favoritism and Jessica's entitled behavior. But now, everything was different. This time, she would make sure they understood what they had done. Her first step was to focus on her financial independence. Amy worked as a marketing professional, and she was good at her job. She decided to pick up freelance projects on the side to boost her income. Late at night, after her regular work hours, she would sit at her laptop and work on designs, proposals, and strategies for her clients. It was exhausting, but it also gave her a sense of purpose. Every extra dollar she earned went into a savings account she had opened specifically for her future car. It wasn't just about replacing what she had lost. It was about reclaiming her independence and proving to herself that she didn't need anyone else to succeed. Meanwhile, Amy started to observe her parents more closely. She noticed how they would often brush aside her concerns, focusing instead on Jessica's endless dramas. Jessica's spa retreat had ended, and she had returned home glowing and cheerful, as if nothing had happened. Amy could hardly look at her without feeling anger bubbling to the surface. "You should have come with me, Amy," Jessica said one evening, flipping through photos from her retreat. "It was life-changing. The yoga sessions, the massages, the gourmet food. It's exactly what I needed." Amy clenched her jaw but stayed silent. She knew arguing with Jessica would only lead to more frustration. Instead, she channeled her energy into her plan. She began documenting everything. She kept a record of all the times her parents had shown blatant favoritism toward Jessica. From the expensive gifts to the countless sacrifices they had expected Amy to make, she wrote it all down. She wasn't sure what she would do with this information yet, but she knew it might come in handy. One day, Amy's father approached her while she was working on her laptop. "Amy, we need to talk," he said, sitting down across from her. She looked up, wary. "What is it?" "We've been thinking," he began, his tone cautious. "Maybe it's time for you to move on. You've been living here for a while now, and we think it would be good for you to find your own place." Amy stared at him, stunned. "You want me to move out?" "It's not like that," her father said quickly. "We just think you'd be happier with your own space. Plus, it's getting a bit crowded here with all of Jessica's things." Amy couldn't believe what she was hearing. Not only had they taken her car, but now they were trying to push her out of the house to make more room for Jessica. It was clear to her that she was nothing more than an afterthought in their lives. But instead of arguing, Amy nodded. "Fine," she said, her voice calm. "I'll start looking for a place." Her father seemed relieved. "That's great. Let us know if you need any help." Amy didn't respond. She didn't want their help. She knew she couldn't rely on them for anything anymore. That night, she started searching for apartments. She found a small but affordable place not too far from her job. It wasn't luxurious, but it was hers. With the money she had been saving, she was able to pay the deposit and move in within a week. Packing her things was bittersweet. As she folded her clothes and boxed up her belongings, she realized how little she actually owned. Most of her life had been spent building other people up, while neglecting herself. Moving day was uneventful. Her parents barely helped, and Jessica didn't even bother to say goodbye. But Amy didn't care. As she stood in her new apartment, surrounded by boxes, she felt a sense of freedom she hadn't felt in years. This was her fresh start, and she was determined to make the most of it. Amy threw herself into her work, both at her job and with her freelance projects. Her hard work paid off, and within a few months, she had saved enough to start seriously looking for a new car. She visited dealerships on weekends, test driving different models, and negotiating prices. She wanted to make sure her next purchase was perfect. One evening, as she was scrolling through listings online, she came across a car that looked almost identical to her old one. Her heart skipped a beat as she clicked on the ad. The price was reasonable, and the dealership wasn't too far away. She made an appointment to see it the next day. When she arrived at the dealership, the car was even more beautiful in person. It felt like fate, as if this was her chance to take back what had been stolen from her. She negotiated with the salesman and managed to get a great deal. Driving it home, she felt a wave of emotions: pride, joy, and a sense of triumph. But Amy wasn't done yet. She knew this was just the beginning. Her family had taken so much from her, and she wanted them to understand the consequences of their actions. She didn't want revenge out of spite. She wanted them to see the damage they had caused and to finally take responsibility. As she parked her new car in front of her apartment, Amy couldn't help but smile. She was no longer the forgotten child, the one who always sacrificed for others. She was strong, independent, and ready to take on whatever came next. Amy's new car was more than just a vehicle. It was a symbol of her determination and independence. Every time she drove it, she felt a surge of pride. It reminded her of how far she had come, despite all the obstacles her family had thrown in her way. But deep down, she knew her journey wasn't over. Her family still didn't understand the harm they had caused, and Amy felt it was time to confront them. One weekend, she decided to pay her parents a visit. As she pulled into the driveway in her new car, she noticed Jessica lounging on the porch with a smoothie in hand. Her sister's carefree attitude was a stark contrast to Amy's hard-earned success. "Nice car," Jessica said with a smirk. "Did Mom and Dad help you buy it?" Amy ignored the comment and walked inside. Her parents were in the living room watching TV. They looked surprised to see her. "Amy, this is a surprise," her mother said, standing up. "How are you?" "I'm fine," Amy replied, her tone neutral. "I wanted to talk to you about something." Her parents exchanged nervous glances but nodded. "Of course," her father said. "What's on your mind?" Amy took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened with my car. And not just that, I've been thinking about how I've been treated over the years. It's clear to me now that I've always been second to Jessica in your eyes." Her mother's face fell. "Amy, that's not true. We love you both equally." "Do you?" Amy asked, her voice steady but firm. "Because it doesn't feel that way. You sold my car without asking me to fund Jessica's retreat. You've always prioritized her needs over mine. And when I needed support, you were nowhere to be found." Her father sighed. "Amy, we never meant to hurt you. Jessica just needed more help." "No," Amy said, cutting him off. "Jessica needed accountability, and instead of teaching her that, you enabled her behavior and expected me to pick up the slack. Well, I'm done. I'm done sacrificing for a family that doesn't value me." Her mother started to cry. "Amy, please don't say that. We do value you. We thought you were strong enough to handle things on your own." "That's not an excuse," Amy said. "Being strong doesn't mean I don't deserve support. It doesn't mean you can take me for granted." Jessica walked in at that moment, looking annoyed. "What's all the yelling about?" she asked, sipping her smoothie. Amy turned to her sister. "This involves you too, Jessica. You've been selfish and entitled for as long as I can remember. And Mom and Dad have let you get away with it, but not anymore. I'm not going to let you or anyone else walk all over me." Jessica rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. You're just jealous because I know how to enjoy life." "Enjoying life doesn't mean taking from others," Amy shot back. "It's time you learned that." Her parents tried to intervene, but Amy held up her hand. "I'm not here to argue. I just wanted to let you know where I stand. I'm focusing on myself from now on. If you can't respect that, then I'll have to distance myself from this family." Her words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Her parents looked heartbroken, and Jessica looked stunned. For the first time, they seemed to realize how serious Amy was. Amy didn't stay much longer. She said her piece and left, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. She didn't know if her family would ever truly understand her perspective, but she knew she had done the right thing by speaking up. In the weeks that followed, Amy focused on building her life. She poured her energy into her work, her hobbies, and her friendships. She even started volunteering at a local community center, helping young women build confidence and pursue their goals. It was fulfilling work that reminded her of her own strength and resilience. Her parents reached out a few times, apologizing and asking to meet. Amy agreed to see them, but she made it clear that things had to change. She wouldn't tolerate being treated as less important anymore. To her surprise, they seemed to be making an effort. They started asking about her life and showing genuine interest in her achievements. Jessica, on the other hand, was slower to change. But Amy didn't let it bother her. She had learned to set boundaries and protect her peace. She no longer felt the need to prove herself to anyone. Driving her new car one evening, Amy reflected on how far she had come. She had turned her pain into strength and taken control of her life. Her family's actions had hurt her deeply, but they had also taught her an invaluable lesson. She was capable of overcoming anything. And for the first time in a long time, Amy felt truly free. As the weeks turned into months, Amy found herself thriving in ways she never imagined. Her work was going better than ever, her social circle was expanding, and she had a newfound sense of peace. But she couldn't ignore the occasional text or call from her parents who seemed to be grappling with their guilt. Each message was a mix of regret and longing, and though Amy appreciated their efforts, she remained cautious. One afternoon, Amy received an unexpected voicemail from her father. His voice sounded heavy, almost strained. "Amy, I know we've hurt you in ways we can't take back. Your mother and we want to talk, really talk. Please, let us make things right." Amy listened to the message twice before deciding to call him back. They arranged to meet at a quiet cafe, a neutral ground where they could talk openly. When Amy arrived, her parents were already seated, looking noticeably anxious. "Amy," her mother said, standing up to hug her. "Thank you for coming." Amy nodded but kept her distance emotionally. "I'm here to listen, but I need you to understand that things can't go back to how they were." Her father sighed. "We understand, and we're not asking for that. We just want to tell you how sorry we are. We've been reflecting a lot on what you said, and you were right. We failed you." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "We thought we were helping Jessica, but we didn't see how much we were hurting you in the process. It wasn't fair, and it wasn't right." Amy remained composed, though their words struck a chord. "I appreciate you saying that, but apologies alone won't fix what's broken. I need to see real change, not just for me, but for yourselves." Her parents nodded earnestly. "We've started therapy," her father said, "as a couple and individually. It's helping us understand our patterns and how we've let them affect our relationships." This was unexpected. Amy felt a flicker of hope but kept her guard up. "That's a good start, but it'll take time to rebuild trust." Her mother reached for her hand, but Amy hesitated before letting her touch it. "We're willing to do whatever it takes. We just want a chance to be better parents to you, Amy. You deserve that." Amy took a deep breath. "Okay, I'm willing to give this a chance, but on my terms. I need boundaries and I need you to respect them." "Of course," her father said immediately. "Anything you need." Their conversation continued for over an hour, touching on old wounds and new beginnings. By the end of it, Amy felt lighter, though she knew this was just the first step in a long process. Meanwhile, Jessica had been conspicuously absent from these efforts. She continued to live her life as though nothing had changed, which didn't surprise Amy. Her sister's entitlement was deeply ingrained, and Amy doubted it would fade without serious effort. Jessica didn't seem interested in making. One evening, Amy received a call from Jessica. It was unusual, given their strained relationship, so Amy hesitated before answering. "What do you want, Jessica?" Amy asked, keeping her tone neutral. Wow. No. Hello? Jessica replied, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I just wanted to see how my dear sister is doing with her fancy new life. Amy rolled her eyes. Cut to the chase, Jessica. Why are you really calling? Jessica sighed dramatically. Fine, I need a favor. I'm short on rent this month and I was hoping you could help me out. Amy couldn't believe what she was hearing. You're unbelievable. After everything that's happened, you still think I owe you something? Oh, come on, Amy, Jessica whined. It's not a big deal. You've got money now, don't you? That's not the point, Amy said firmly. The point is that you've never taken responsibility for your actions. You've always expected everyone else to clean up your messes. Well, not anymore. I'm done enabling you. Jessica scoffed. Wow, you're so high and mighty now. Don't forget where you came from, Amy. I haven't forgotten, Amy replied. That's why I'm standing my ground. Goodbye, Jessica. She hung up, feeling a mix of frustration and relief. Jessica's call had reinforced Amy's resolve to maintain her boundaries. She couldn't change her sister, but she could change how she responded to her. In the days that followed, Amy continued to focus on her own growth. She attended workshops, networked with like-minded individuals, and even started mentoring young women in her field. Each step forward felt like a victory, a reminder that she was no longer defined by her family's shortcomings. One evening, as Amy was journaling, she received a text from her mother. It was a photo of a family album page, featuring a young Amy smiling brightly at a school event. The caption read, "We're so proud of you, Amy. Always have been, always will be." Amy stared at the message, tears welling in her eyes. She knew her parents still had a long way to go, but this small gesture meant the world to her. It was a sign that they were trying, and for now, that was enough. As she put her phone down, Amy felt a deep sense of gratitude, not for her family's mistakes, but for the strength she had gained in overcoming them. Her journey wasn't over, but she was finally moving forward on her terms. In the weeks that followed, Amy found herself embracing her new life with a sense of determination and hope. She no longer looked back with bitterness, but with clarity, using her experiences as a foundation for her growth. However, her journey wasn't without its challenges. The shadow of her family's actions still lingered, but Amy was determined to rise above it. One day, while organizing her new apartment, Amy came across a small box she hadn't opened in years. Inside were mementos from her childhood, photos, handwritten notes, and a small toy car her parents had given her when she was 6. The car was bright red, a miniature version of the one she had dreamed of owning as an adult. Holding it in her hand, Amy felt a mix of nostalgia and pain. But instead of letting it consume her, she decided to turn it into something positive. Amy began volunteering at a local community center, sharing her story with young people who were struggling with family issues. Her honesty and vulnerability resonated with many of them, and she became a source of inspiration. Through her mentoring, Amy discovered a deep sense of purpose. She realized that by helping others, she was also healing herself. Meanwhile, her parents continued their efforts to rebuild their relationship with her. They attended family counseling sessions and sent her occasional updates on their progress. While Amy appreciated their commitment, she maintained her boundaries, ensuring that their reconciliation was genuine and not just a temporary fix. Jessica, however, remained distant. Her entitlement and refusal to take accountability created a barrier that Amy knew she couldn't break through. Instead of trying to fix things with her sister, Amy chose to focus on the relationships that brought her joy and fulfillment. She spent more time with her friends, colleagues, and the young people she mentored, creating a support system that felt like a true family. One afternoon, Amy received an email from her father. Attached was a scanned copy of a letter he had written to her when she was a teenager, but had never sent. The letter detailed his pride in her accomplishments, his admiration for her resilience, and his regret for not expressing these feelings more openly. Reading his words, Amy felt a wave of emotions. While it didn't erase the past, it was a step toward healing. Amy decided to reply to the email. She thanked her father for his honesty and acknowledged the progress he and her mother had made. She also reiterated the importance of continuing their journey of self-improvement. Her response was both compassionate and firm, reflecting the balance she had learned to maintain in her relationships. As months turned into a year, Amy's life continued to flourish. She published a blog series about overcoming family challenges, which gained significant attention. Readers from around the world reached out to share their stories and express their gratitude for her openness. Amy's words had created a ripple effect, inspiring countless others to find their own paths to healing. One evening, Amy received an unexpected visitor. It was Jessica, standing at her doorstep with a hesitant expression. "Can we talk?" she asked. Amy was taken aback, but nodded, stepping aside to let her sister in. They sat down in the living room, the tension between them palpable. I've been doing a lot of thinking," Jessica began. "About everything. About how I've treated you. And I'm sorry, Amy. I know I've been selfish and unfair. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to try to make things right." Amy listened carefully, her heart conflicted. Jessica's words seemed sincere, but years of disappointment made it hard to fully trust her. "I appreciate you saying that, Jessica," Amy said finally, "but making things right takes more than an apology. It's about actions, not just words." Jessica nodded, tears in her eyes. "I know, and I'm ready to prove it. I've started seeing a therapist, and I've been reflecting on how I can be a better sister to you. I just hope it's not too late." Amy took a deep breath. "It's never too late to try, but it's going to take time and effort. If you're serious about this, I'm willing to give it a chance." For the first time in years, Amy and Jessica had a heartfelt conversation. They discussed their past, their pain, and their hopes for the future. While their relationship was far from perfect, it was a start. As Amy closed the door after Jessica left, she felt a sense of closure she hadn't experienced before. Her journey had been long and challenging, but it had also been transformative. She had learned to stand up for herself, to set boundaries, and to prioritize her own well-being. And in doing so, she had not only reclaimed her life, but had also inspired those around her to do the same. Amy placed the small toy car on her bookshelf, a symbol of her resilience and growth. It was a reminder that while the road had been difficult, she had navigated it with strength and grace. And as she looked toward the future, she knew that she was finally in the driver's seat of her own life.